Time to talk about Wight Kings. I've talked about Gunnery Wights in the past, one of my favorite characters, and they do share one important characteristic with their skeleton cousins, which is, of course, Scabscrath. So Wight Kings, very important hero choice, very strong, and yeah, the Scabscrath gives them an extra option to go after certain types of units, which can be very dangerous to vampire counts. Again, myself against my patron, Noldor, aka Anti-Mage. He's got Vlad von Karstein, double Wight King. Terror Goose, which I have failed to spot. Whoops, as I go into a little bit of fast forward there. Some Crypt Ghouls, we've got Skeleton Warriors, Grave Guards, an Unholy Lodestone, Konigstein Stalkers. I'm going to blast with the Shem's Burning Gaze from the Light Wizard there into Corpse Cart. We've got Gotrek up front, a couple of Flagellants, Archlector leading the way, 5 Halberds, and 2, 3, 4, yeah, 3 Spears. That's right, 3 Spears. So a relatively small, narrow, limited build. 2 Empire Knights as well, completely forgotten about in the back. We'll get them up and forward in just a minute. But Wight Kings, so the Scabscrath is of course very nice. Big cone-shaped magical attack. Not spell, but you know what I mean. A AoE damaging ability. Quite good against low armor units. Doesn't do the most armor piercing damage. I don't know if it actually does any armor piercing damage, but really nice against certain types of units. Vlad comes in here. It's going to get the Gotrek power roll, also juiced up with prayer buffs. Here comes the Archlector, so Vlad definitely suffering. He can absolutely tank this out, no problem. I'm going to go full-on 3v1 here with the Light Wizard. Light Wizard immediately gets punched in the face. Meanwhile, the War Wagons are teeing off on the Wight Kings, of course. They are undead, they will not rout, and they're very hard to crumble given that they actually have very good leadership for an undead unit. Great weapon strength, 410 weapon damage with 14 bonus versus infantry. Their stats are not amazing, 34 attacks, actually pretty poor for a unit of this type. 48 defense is serviceable though, I mean that's what you would expect. 90 armor with a missile block chance, also quite nice. They don't really have much of a charge bonus, 35 charge bonus. Compared to them, something like a Paladin, they really don't do a lot. But Vlad here, my snipe attempt is, of course, failed. Who's surprised? I mean, it's Vlad. He's one of the hardest characters to snipe in the game. And now the Wight Kings are going to move in as I call down a Soulfire just to get that zombie. Gotrek does get his healing proc. No, it actually does not heal him. It looks like maybe it healed Vlad instead, and he dies. That is still a bug, which is a little bit infuriating. But the Wight Kings with their anti-infantry damage and, of course, extra numbers. 3v1, Gotrek easily goes down. Would have gone down anyway, even if he had got healing. Well, this is immediately a large problem for me. I'm going to pop a Light of Battle here, which is the other spell I brought. Make everything unbreakable. Of course, Flagellants are already unbreakable. And a really nice Scabscrath. You saw the effect go down there. Great against the Flagellants. Another one there. Generally, you want to try and put it a little bit further back so the full width hits, because it's like quite a bit longer than the template, right? Scabscrath. But against archer lines, against light infantry lines, anything like that, it's going to be great. Gem's Burning Gaze just blast the side of the corpse cart there instead of hitting the Terror Goose, which is potentially a problem, but let's not dwell on it too much. More zombie summons going to be pulled up. The Halberdiers are holding out mostly fine for the time being. Flagellants have run out of steam, though. Graveguard with their anti-infantry obviously going to do very well there. The Crypt Ghouls also high weapon damage and poison, trade really nicely with Flagellants. Kind of one of the only matchups where you might consider taking Crypt Ghouls. The Blood Knights as well. Haven't really been highlighting them too much. I've been able to mostly limit them, but they did take out my exposed and forgotten Empire Knights, which again probably ends up costing me pretty severely here. But let's see, can I finish off Goose? A little bit of a dangerous situation for Archlector and the Light Wizard to be in, but I'm going to pop again that Light of Battle, make sure everyone stays in the fight, won't break, especially with Goose. Got the War Wagons dealing quite a bit of damage. And I'm very much focused on trying to finish Goose off at this point, mostly because I figure if I can finish off all of the single entities, then my Halberds might be able to just grind everything down, as long as they're not getting terrified and, you know, side and rear charged and everything. But Empire Knights being gone is definitely a problem. The Terror Goose, Noldor doing a great job getting it up and away there, getting some healing sustain on it, so I'm going to charge in. Pop a Soulfire on these Graveguard, try my best to try and take them out. Yeah, good stuff. It's pretty decent stuff, actually. And Goose, meanwhile, is regenerating this entire time. The Blood Knights are also mostly unopposed. Breath attack, not really meant to go against infantry, but does land and explode quite a few of them. Terror Goose breath attack definitely meant to go against kind of single entities and monsters and such. Maybe could have finished off the Archlector with it if he was directly overhead, but that's okay. The Grand Shield of Faith here to help protect against the charge, also kind of interrupt the charge of those Blood Knights somewhat, so that's a pretty good situation for me. Casting Light of Battle again, even though I don't really need to, it just makes me feel better. And if, you know, the Halberdiers end up taking a bunch of damage from something, it won't end up mattering too much. I just want to make sure everything stays in the fight as long as possible. Probably, in hindsight, should have held on to that a little bit longer, or else just keep spamming Shem's Burning Gaze instead. I also didn't bring nets, which obviously is a mistake. Could have potentially netted down the Goose and finished him off earlier. But another... Ooh, double Scab's Wrath. One of them actually hits mostly the undead units, but that's fine. They've got a lot more models to give at this point. And that damage now on the Halberdiers, you can see how I probably should have waited on that Light of Battle. They're starting to get much lower on leadership at this point. And I could have potentially got them to hold a little bit longer, but they're taking significant damage. Don't get me wrong, the Crypt Ghouls as well, again, trade really well into Halberdiers, trade well into most Empire infantry. I actually really do like the pick in this matchup, believe it or not. A couple of them in the right situation can deal a lot of damage. They'll get face charged hard by Knights. But anyway, back to the Wight Kings. They pretty much finished off my leadership at this point. We do finally fell to one Wight King, and a point-blank Shem's Burning Gaze allows us to finish off the Goose. Will we finish off Goose? The Light Wizard literally pays with his life, just gets killed by Vlad. And the Wight King... Goose goes down, so we at least completed the objective of killing 2 of the 4 single entities here of Noldor's army. We got the other 2 pretty worked down as well. Vlad's, I mean, at his healing cap, almost had a successful snipe on him earlier, but obviously Vlad is, like I said, one of the tankiest characters in the game. One last Panic Soulfire will absolutely smash those Crypt Ghouls, but at the same time, the Archlector, again, just getting killed by the Wight King straight up. Oh, man. Wight Kings are amazing. They're so good for the cost you pay for them. I debated on whether or not I should name them best in class for generic melee hero. I previously have said the Scarvet is the best. I'm probably still going to stick with that, or maybe it's the Paladin because of some other reasons. But the Wight King definitely is in that discussion, right? Like the fact that I considered them for that, you know, top slot says a lot about the Wight Kings, and Scab's Wrath's obviously a big part of that, but just having a tanky, decent stat, extra cheap single entity right now, the way the meta is, I mean, they've been good for a long time, but even more so now than before, those cheap single entities, super important. For myself, Light Wizard ended up actually generating some really nice damage value. I gotta use Shem's Burning Gaze more. I've forgotten how effective of a spell it was against units which are weak to fire damage, because it actually does fire damage. Gotrek ends up paying for himself. Didn't have any abilities on him, but probably should have had Gotrek's Doom to try and give him some magic resistance, or sorry, damage resistance and extra melee defense. Yeah, would have helped him greatly there. Interesting, the kill totals on all my anti-large infantry, and most of them don't pay for themselves. Gotta love zombies. Same thing with these flagellants here. Like, insane kill totals, not a lot of value. The Empire Knights, me sacrificing them, I think was a big issue as well. Had I had them operational, I could have at least blocked up some of these other units, maybe blocked the Wight Kings from getting in and killing Gotrek, isolate Vlad better. Anyway, War Wagons are awesome, though. I really like them in this matchup, actually. Maybe should have brought more, arguably. Like, cut one Empire Knight and bring one more War Wagon. Just because they're relatively tanky, you can protect them reasonably well with like a halberd box, like a true Hussite wagon fort, and they will just continuously deal damage to high-value targets, which is really nice against the vampire counts. Having ranged units that they can't shut down is super important, I feel, because they're some of the best at shutting down ranged units. Yeah, both the Wight Kings generate really nice value. The rest of the army here, I mean, it's undead, so you wouldn't expect a lot, but the Crypt Ghouls do okay. Grave Guards do great. Blood Knights definitely pay for themselves. Goose, not quite paying for himself, but pretty close. But the Wight Kings, man, considering how little they cost, and, I mean, you'll see them in a few different forms in terms of mounts. They don't have a super wide mount selection. It's just like on foot, horse, or barded horse, which the Barded Horse is not that much slower, and it does give you plus 20 armor. You have the extra 50 points. This is a pretty decent upgrade, but it's not something you should necessarily prioritize. But I mean, Heroic Killing Blow can be pretty decent, considering they have 400 weapon strength. You know, it can add quite a bit to that, especially when you stack it with this Potion of Strength. You can get a massive plus 100%, you know, armor piercing and base weapon damage for a short period of time, but it does cost quite a bit extra. A lot of the thing about the Wight King is cost optimization. On foot with just Scav Scrath, 663 points. Baseline just 500 points. So you can see how, like, even with a mount option, he's less than 1,000 with this basic kit, and what that means is he can pay for himself extremely easily. I mean, even just with the Scav Scraths alone, but also pretty decent melee combatant. Again, probably, arguably one of the worst in this kind of generic melee hero class, like the Empire Captain even. Less melee defense, but much better melee attack, less weapon strength as well, and no anti-infantry, which I find kind of curious. But that attack, in particular, I would say is probably the worst. I mean, I'm just thinking like Tomb Prince, maybe. 36 attack, even slightly better, right? So, yeah, the attack's very low, but the anti-infantry does help make up for that against infantry targets, obviously. Puts him up to 48, which is same as his melee defense, perfectly serviceable. And kind of what you would expect for a lower tier, quote-unquote, generic melee hero. But again, in terms of, like, competitiveness, I would say Bretonnia's Paladin, due to him having anti-large rather than anti-infantry and a better charge bonus, plus Guardian. I mean, it's arguable whether Guardian is better than Scav Scrath. Scav Scrath obviously will deal damage, but Guardian allows for some resistance stacking, especially with the Fey Enchantress that's just absolutely insanely strong right now. So part of that, I guess, part of the Paladin's strength is relying specifically on the Fey Enchantress, whereas the Wight King is kind of strong regardless of what Vampire Count's Lord you take, and in most situations I would say filling all your hero slots with Vampire Counts is pretty important, and it doesn't cost a lot. I mean, you think about like 1 unit of Graveyard, you don't need a lot more extra points, in fact no extra points. It costs less to take just the Wight King himself with the Scav Scrath, right? So it's pretty easy to find the extra points to fill out your hero slots, whether that be with Necromancers, Wight Kings, Banshees, whatever. Wight Kings are a really strong contender for those slots, and I do think you should pretty much always be filling them with Vampire Counts. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.